Welcome to this explainer on Exodus chapter 18. I'm so glad you're here today because we're going to embark on a formal, chronological, verse-by-verse study of a truly profound text. We're looking at a vital, transitional moment in the life of national Israel, a moment where worship perfectly meets wisdom. My goal today is to make the deep theological structures of this chapter crystal clear for you. So settle in, focus your mind, and let's dive right into the profound depths of Jethro's wisdom and the biblical principles of shared leadership. Here's the roadmap for our study today. We'll start with the historical and cultural background, move through the biblical narrative, unpack the theological significance, dive into some spiritual lessons and application, and wrap it all up with our conclusion. Let us examine the historical and cultural background. Now, to rightly divide the word of truth using a literal, grammatical, and historical framework, we've got to first orient ourselves dispensationally. Take a look at our timeline to see exactly where we stand. National Israel is right at the very end of the dispensation of promise, an era that actually stretches all the way back to Abraham. We are presently on the eve of Sinai here in Exodus 18. This is a massive, profound transitional moment because Israel is poised to enter the dispensation of law, which becomes imminent in chapter 19. God is using this exact hour to prepare a redeemed, yet very weary people to receive his law. It's absolutely fascinating how the text pauses here to focus on names. As the narrative tells us, Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, arrives with Moses' wife, Zipporah, and their two sons. You have to remember, in the ancient Near East, names weren't just simple labels. They literally fixed family testimony into everyday speech. Gershom means foreigner in a foreign land, speaking of exile. Eleazar means God was my helper, speaking of rescue. So think about that. Every single time Moses called his boys to dinner, he was rehearsing his own alienation and God's miraculous grace. It's beautiful, really. It grounds Israel's future lawgiver in a profound, deeply personal theology of grace and deliverance. Following this big family reunion, we witness a remarkable cultural and theological event. Jethro, who was a Gentile priest of Midian, publicly confesses that the Lord is greater than all other gods. He brings burnt offerings, and Aaron, along with the elders of Israel, joins him to eat a meal right there in the presence of God. The crucial takeaway here is this. This shared table of praise proves that God's judgment on Egypt's pantheon actually worked. It was successful in making his name known. We're seeing a widening circle of praise among the nations, happening right at the foot of the mountain of God. Let us examine the biblical narrative. As we move sequentially through the text, we see that news of God completely overturning an empire travels a lot faster than merchant caravans. Moses brings Jethro into his tent and recounts every single hardship they faced on the road and exactly how the Lord saved them out of each one. And that brings us to verse 9. Jethro responds with immense delight and joy. He blesses the Lord for delivering Israel from the sheer arrogance of Egypt's leaders. It's such a great reminder that this kind of storytelling turns past hardships into the very fuel for our present worship. But as the sun comes up the very next morning, the joy of that prior evening's worship is sharply contrasted by a severe administrative bottleneck. There is exactly one single leader, Moses, taking his seat to judge all the disputes. Imagine a line of cases stretching endlessly from morning until evening. Jethro watches this unfold and immediately recognizes a crisis. This immense, crushing burden threatens to literally break both the shepherd, Moses, and his flock. Zeal without design, my friend, is an absolute recipe for exhaustion. So Jethro steps in, and he doesn't do this to diminish Moses' calling, but to preserve it. He offers some humble pastoral counsel. Notice Jethro's insistence here. He states that Moses must remain the strict center of intercession and teaching. He says, as the NIV translates it, you must be the people's representative before God. So Moses isn't supposed to step back from prayer or the ministry of the word, not at all. Instead, Jethro is counseling a reordering of the work, delegating the daily disputes so Moses can actually focus on the heaviest theological and mediatorial burdens. It's a real game changer. Let us examine the theological significance. Now, let's look at the prophetic mechanics operating just beneath the surface of this chapter. Historically, we have a Gentile priest, Jethro, worshiping the God of Israel. But dynamically, this historical event serves as a preview, a stunning hint of a glorious prophetic fulfillment. This actually points forward to passages like Isaiah 2, which prophesies a future day when all nations will stream to the mountain of the Lord to learn God's ways. Jethro's joy at Israel's rescue is literally a prophetic foretaste of the millennial kingdom. To be thorough students of the Word, we really need to explicitly categorize our findings into systematic theology. First, let's observe the soteriology at play. That's the study of salvation. Jethro's confession that the Lord is greater than all gods beautifully illustrates how Gentiles are drawn to the knowledge of the true God through the testimony of his saving acts. Second, check out the Christology, the study of Christ. The sheer wariness of Moses and the subsequent yoke of shared leadership points us directly to Jesus Christ. He is the ultimate good king who offers a yoke that is easy and a burden that is light, providing true, lasting rest for both the weary shepherd and the flock. Take a close look at the distinct programs presented here, because they are absolutely paramount to our dispensational understanding. We must consistently maintain a strict theological distinction between God's program for national Israel and his program for the church. Over on the left, we see God's physical, theocratic structuring of national Israel at Sinai, Moses appointing civil judges over a physical nation. On the right, we see God's later, spiritual structuring of the church, things like the apostles appointing deacons in Acts 6 to handle physical distributions, and the giving of spiritual gifts in Ephesians 4 to equip the saints. While the core principle of shared labor echoes across both, we've got to make sure we never collapse Israel's national structure into the spiritual body of the church. Let's return to the text for a moment to examine exactly how this shared leadership was implemented for Israel. Moses was instructed to appoint men in graded groups, thousands, hundreds, 50s, and 10s. But I want you to look closely at the mandatory character qualifications required of them. They had to fear God, be trustworthy, and hate dishonest gain. Why? Well, because civil justice collapses entirely when leaders crave personal advantage. Character sits at the absolute center of shared authority in God's economy. It's absolutely crucial. Let us examine these spiritual lessons and application. Theology must always bear fruit in the life of the believer, right? So, how does this apply to you today? Well, first off, gratitude fuels mission. Just as Moses rehearsed God's mercies to Jethro, your own home dinner table can become a powerful place of evangelistic praise when you simply share what God has done for you. Second, centralize prayer in the Word and delegate the rest of the daily matters. Third, remember that unbending integrity is always prized over mere cleverness. Character governs capacity, for sure. And finally, humility receives counsel willingly, but always submits it to God's ultimate authority. That brings us to a profound question I really want you to carefully consider. Does efficiency usurp divine command? Notice Jethro's vital, careful phrasing in verse 23. If you do this, and God so commands. You see, Jethro's brilliant administrative advice doesn't usurp divine revelation, it actually seeks confirmation. This securely guards the line between what is merely a good, efficient idea and what is a genuinely godly path. As modern disciples, we must remember this. We don't act simply because something works. We act because the Lord commands it. Let us examine the conclusion. As we conclude our time together, let me read this final scripture passage verbatim. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain. If you do this and God so commands, you will be able to stand the strain, and all these people will go home satisfied. This chapter leaves an immense weight of wisdom regarding shared leadership right before the thunderings of the law at Sinai. It teaches us that zeal must be yoked to wisdom, and character must precede authority. Student, may the Lord bless you with the humility of Moses to receive wise counsel, and the integrity to serve him faithfully in whatever capacity he has placed you. Ask yourself this week, are you carrying a burden God meant for you to share? For more in-depth studies, visit the Grace and Knowledge series blog at woody-brom.online.